So here's the question. I'm with you. I think it's genius for Discovery, and I think for AT&T, spinning it off makes sense. The question is, are these the right merger partners? Would you bet on this group to make it work, especially when you start to think about the rest of the competitive landscape?
Well, look, this is actually, I mean, there's going to be a lot written today about mega deal and huge. Just step back. This is essentially taking the old Time Warner that you and I talked about and knew really well. I mean, I still remember when you were interviewing all of these executives at your deal book conference and whatever, like back in the Time Warner days, and you're injecting a larger, another small cable network group in Discovery into that. Now, do they own a lot of their programming? Sure. They own a lot of unscripted reality programming, but this is not massively transformational. We had argued for a merger of WarnerMedia and NBC Universal. That would have been really transformational. 2 studios, the theme park business, which has a lot of the Warner franchises like Harry Potter merging in with WarnerMedia. That would have been a mega transformational landscape deal. This is adding essentially unscripted content heft and cash flow to WarnerMedia. Probably the most important aspect of this deal is it's no longer part of a telco. Like, you now have a management team that doesn't have to answer to the telco powers. You don't have the dividend to worry about. So this is definitely positive for WarnerMedia. This frees them of that structure. But I don't think this is as transformational as the alternatives might have been. I just can't believe Brian Roberts is allowing this to happen and isn't trying to stop this and trying to buy WarnerMedia now.
Well, we were talking about that prospect in the last hour, but when you read through this release in the SEC filing, it does not need a vote by AT&T. The vote on the other side already seems to have happened. It looks like it's a locked up deal.
It does. I think this feels like it's a done deal. Again, I'm just surprised if you had said WarnerMedia is for sale, and put the auction sign out in front on the front lawn. Right. I think you would have generated some. I mean, remember, this is not just Turner. I mean, yes, do we all love Turner assets? No. I mean, those are secularly challenged assets. But the film studio is one of the largest and most powerful in the world. And the reinvention of DC is a huge opportunity when you look at what Disney's done with Marvel. And then you get to HBO and HBO Max. And I think they'd come a long way in building a tech-focused streaming platform. They have more subscribers in the U.S. than Disney. Plus, they have more subscribers in the U.S. than Hulu. I mean, they were doing a pretty amazing job at HBO Max and HBO building this direct-to-consumer platform. I think the big question all of your viewers need to be thinking about, Andrew, is how does this transformation, what happens to the talent? Because a lot of talent, sort of filtered into WarnerMedia over the course of the past couple of years, really the last 18 months since Jason Kilar took over. How is this new structure and new team, as you figure out who comes and who goes, how do they keep that momentum going? That's probably not the easiest thing to do. There's been a lot of kind of deal waiting for executives throughout WarnerMedia over the last 5 years.
So, Rich, why do you think Zaslav won out here? Why do you think this was a more attractive deal and partnership? Do you think that there would have been problems with trying to maintain a majority control if they had done this deal with Comcast? What do you think happened?
Well, there's no doubt you would have had to, if you did a deal with Comcast, you would have had to do a double reverse Morris Trust and East sort of divested control. That meant, Comcast would have had to divest control and AT&T would have had to have divested control. Obviously, this transaction gives AT&T shareholders, not AT&T, but AT&T shareholders effectively have control, although that's a little strange, right? You've got telco shareholders owning what is now essentially a streaming media company or a media company with lots of legacy cable networks, and the plan to be a streaming media company. Anywhere. So that's sort of a weird asset in terms of the shareholder base. But look, I think they won out. My guess is the view that Viacom was probably a sort of controlled company. Discovery was not. Although obviously Malone played a large role, I think, in kind of willing this deal and also making sure that, Zaslav and his team were in charge of the combined entity. I don't know, Becky. It's a great question. Like, what was the reason for not running an auction process here? I don't know that. I mean, obviously this gets cash quickly, and you lay off a lot of debt. $43 billion, I think I was reading this morning. Yep. You're laying off a lot of debt. You're laying off a lot of debt and doing it, very quickly. Obviously, no shareholder approval. This doesn't seem to have any regulatory approval. A Comcast deal would have had regulatory approval that would have been needed. This is probably a pretty quick way to generate cash, but maybe it's that simple. This was the quickest way to generate a lot of cash for AT&T, and they sort of acknowledged once again that vertical integration is a complete failure.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.